Dr. Archana Vare, and I would be speaking on how to prepare an excellent PowerPoint presentation. So there are 300 million PowerPoint users in the world, and they do 30 million presentations each day. And about 1 million presentations are going on right now. But 50% of them are unbearable, and since the brain does not pay attention to boring things, we end up having audience like this. So why the audience is bored? This is because they do not understand the message and they feel that their time is getting wasted. So why does this happen? This happens mainly due to lack of significance, structure, simplicity, and rehearsal. So let us see how to avoid this and let us make the world a better place. So why do you basically present? Is this just to pass the information, or just because your boss has asked you to do so, or you want to create some meaning? So what is the significance and the purpose of your presentation? So know your purpose, and your presentation should have a clear purpose and a good flow. What is the subject and why it matters to you? So gather all the information about your topic and try to make a good content. Even before you start preparing for your presentation, think about what is the topic of your presentation, whether the topic has been allotted to you or you can select the topic for your presentation. Then how much is the time limit? How much time is allotted to you? And who's going to listen to your presentation? So the audience is the most important part of your presentation. So always ask yourself, what does my audience need to hear from me? Try to understand the requirements of your audience and then start making your presentation. Then based on these considerations, sketch a basic outline of your presentation. Think how is it going to look like, what are the main headers of your presentation, how the information will flow from one slide to another, what are the important key points, and finally, what is the message that your audience should take home. So what should be the structure of your presentation? Structure is how you place the building blocks of your story. So make your presentation simple and interesting by following simple PowerPoint basics. So these PowerPoint basics are slide design, font, color, layout, and style. So let us discuss something about the slide design. So now which design to use? This is the most important question. Now which design to use? So which template to use? So you can use the template that the PowerPoint provides. So these are the ready-made templates which come along with the PowerPoint, or you should make your own design. So create your own design. Your audience deserves something special. If you must use the default PowerPoint themes, then you can use them as a starting point, and then you can customize by adjusting the colors, the fonts, and the backgrounds. So try different combinations. Let your creativity flow. So after selecting the slide, let us discuss something about the font. So which font you should use? So always use good fonts. Now these are the examples of the left-sided image shows a serif font and the right-sided image shows a sans serif font. Now what is a serif font? Those structures which are marked with the red circle. So serifs are the semi-structural details or small decorative flourishes which are present on the ends of some of the strokes that make up the symbols or the letters. An example would be a Times New Roman font. So sans serif font does not have these details or the flourishes. An example would be an Arial font. So it is said that the serif fonts are usually easier to read in large text areas like in books. But if you want to make a digital presentation, then you should use a sans serif font. So serif fonts take longer to read because of these structural details, and the example would be Times New Roman or the Courier or the Didot font. And the sans serif font is easier to read. Example would be Arial or the Comic Sans or the Trebuchet. This is an example of a sans serif font, Comic Sans. Then again, this is an example of a serif font. This is again a serif font. Some fonts, they look super in boldface. For example, Arial versus Arial bold, Comic Sans versus Comic Sans bold, Trebuchet versus Trebuchet bold. Now, after deciding the font, what should be the size of the font. So the type size should be 18 points or larger. Use different size fonts for main points, and the secondary points can be in smaller fonts. Avoid using all capital letters because it is really hard to read. So after deciding the font, let us discuss about the color. So colors are nice, so play with colors. Find your like. Flat colors are beautiful and contrast is your friend. So you should use the color palette. A color palette is basically a combination of colors that go very well with each other and also make your presentations look really beautiful. So if you're going to use an inbuilt template of PowerPoint, then the color palette usually comes along with it. But if you are preparing a template from scratch, then you should look for a color palette. Always think which color combination suits your presentation the most. And you can also generate the color palettes for free in minutes from the commercially available sites. Okay? Then when you choose a color palette, it gives a theme to your presentation and it brings the whole presentation together. Then after choosing the color, let us discuss something about the background. So which background you should use? So dark letters against a light background, they work. The dark letters against a light background, they are best for smaller rooms and for teaching. But the light letters against a dark backgrounds, they also work. So many experts feel that a dark blue or black background works best for talks in a large room. But then avoid backgrounds like these because they are distracting and they're difficult to read from. Always be consistent with the background that you use. As you must have noticed that today for my presentation I have used the different backgrounds. But this is because I'm trying to get across the concepts of PowerPoint basics, and I cannot do so without using the different backgrounds. But when you are presenting something scientific, then make sure that you keep the background judiciously consistent. Avoid red-green combinations because a large fraction of the human population is red-green colorblind. Then other color combinations like these can be equally bad. So view your slides in grayscale to ensure that there is adequate color contrast in each slide. After deciding the color, let us discuss something about the layout. So the layout should be simple. Every slide should have a heading. Title in a few words explains what your slide is all about. These titles, they capture the attention of your audience and make them listen to your presentation, and also they remember your talks even after you finish presenting. So every slide should have a heading. Sentences are preferred if it is possible to make a statement. When too much text is evil, so avoid too much text. So limit text blocks to no more than 2 lines each. Now, do you recognize this slide? Slides with multiple paragraphs of text have shown to significantly decrease the attention of the audience and thus the effectiveness of getting your message across. Since we cannot read and listen at the same time, this basically tells the audience to read directly off the slides and they stop listening to you. So let your slides breathe. It lets your audience listen to you. So do not use this slide as a manuscript because this is visually engaging. So break up your bullet points into separate slides. Prepare lists, and the list should not contain more than 3 items. It is often effective to unveil your list one by one. Like you talk about item 1, and after you've finished everything about the item 1, then you unveil item 2 and then unveil item 3. Avoid sublists like these. Be generous with empty space. Limit the number of items on each slide. Each slide should just make 1 or 2 points. Now look at this slide. I mean, there is so much information just put together on one slide. So if you try to cram too much into a slide and place things too close to the sides, then they can get cut off if you're using a poor projector. In any case, this slide looks all cluttered and junky. Then look at this slide. So many graphs, so many pictures together. So you cannot explain all the graphs, and there's a simple rule for showing figures and images. If you're not going to take the time to explain it, then just get rid of it. So after the layout, let us discuss something about the style. Avoid fancy transitions between slides unless they have a good reason. For example, when the text appears like this, then we don't want the audience to watch the animation, okay? So use the appear effect and not the fancy effects. But now look at this animation, how effectively it educates us about the inflow and outflow of the aqueous humor in a self-explanatory way. So animations like these, they can be used. Now for example, here we show the bearing of the circumlinear vessel. So this is again an example of a self-explanatory animation. Then this is an example of bayoneting. So these are very educative and they are very self-explanatory. So animations like these, they should be used in your presentation. But don't try to show too many slides. Often, less is more. So try your best to include a simple image on every slide. Because images, they say more than 1,000 words. Images tend to catch people's attention and make the message more powerful. Now, always use good quality images and avoid using images which have watermark on them. So now there are some sites from where you can get the free images like the Pixabay, and they give free high quality images. Then there are other sites like Unsplash or Pixels. They also give you the images. Uh, then if you are obtaining these pictures from published sources, then they are not your pictures, then always make sure that you credit these pictures and mention the sources from where you have obtained them. This will improve the credibility of your work. Then how you should present the information. So the answer is infographics. Infographics are great. So you should always use the various types of graphs because they make your presentation more interesting. So you can use the various graphs as pie charts or the other graphs. Now suppose you have to present this information like ocular injuries from June 2018 to September 2018. So how you should present this information? So the answer is graphs. So this is an example of a good graph and this is an example of a bad graph. Now why this is a good graph? Because it has a title and the color contrast is also good. And now look at this graph. So there are minor grid lines which are not necessary. The font is too small. Then the colors are illogical. The title is missing. The contrast is not good. The shading is distracting. So avoid making graphs like these and make simple graphs like these. So this is an example of a simple infographic and this is an awful 3D pie chart. But the infographics like these, they are very educative for the patients also. So proof your slides for spelling mistakes and grammatical errors. If English is not your first language, then please have someone and check your presentation. So rehearsal is the key. So once your slides are ready, make sure to practice them. Stand in front of the mirror and concentrate on your posture too. And as Malik ma'am has already talked about the attire, I won't go in details about it. So preparation is the key. Know your material well, practice it, and respect your time limits. Many times it is seen that after going on stage, many people turn their back to the audience and read every word on their presentation. So avoid this. Because when you turn your back to the audience, you lose eye contact with your audience and the presentation starts becoming boring. So if you don't maintain an eye contact with your audience, after some time the audience will lose interest in your presentation. So go for a delivery style which is more engaging. Try to bind your entire audience just by making an eye contact. So keep a straight posture. And there are something beyond PowerPoint, and there are some available apps like Canva or Prezia or Powtoon, so you can use them also. So to conclude, use an effective and strong closing. Your audience is likely to remember your last words. So use a conclusion slide to summarize the main points of your presentation and suggest future avenues of your research. So it is very easy to use the PowerPoint badly, but it takes some work and forethought to use the PowerPoint well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Archana, for a wonderful presentation. I think she's thoroughly researched how to make a PowerPoint presentation. I'd just like to add two more points. If you have a logo of the hospital you work in or your personal clinic, please add it to each slide. You must have noticed on my slide, there's a logo of my clinic. Also, in your first slide, give your own personal details, like your email ID and your phone number. Some people in the audience might like to contact you later or email you, so that information should be there. I've learned this from listening to and looking at other people's slides. Thank you so much.